Hey guys, welcome back to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles! In the last episode, we went through the witness testimony, the second one of the Skulkin brothers, and we had some very, let's say, interesting revelations. And now we are going to cross-examine them with the encounter with the victim, so let's just go!
Alright, so we just go inside the gap and heave the sigh of relief when the Jesus showed his mug.
Give me that gun, he bellowed, and then he flew at us like he was possessed. I thought we'd had it.
For an old geezer, the bloke was strong as an ox. He chucked me over the counter.
I pulled my gun on him, and then he legged it through that door into the back room.
We never had nothing to do with killing him. That's all what happened, I swear.
Okay, interesting. So you're not telling us that moments before the victim was killed in the storeroom, you in fact encountered him in the main part of the shop?
Well, yeah. Sorry.
Well, we find ourselves at an interesting juncture. This changes matters considerably.
But honest, Governor, this time.
This time, Nash, this time we ain't got nothing more to hide.
Very well. Counsel for the defense, you may proceed with your cross-examination.
Yes, my lord.
This is it. The moment I've been waiting for. Alright, so let's press some shady-looking people. Encounter with the victim.
Alright, so we just go inside the gap and heave the sigh of relief when Jesus showed his mug.
Hold it! Okay. When you say Jesus, I presume you mean the victim and the proprietor of the shop, Mr. Windybank.
Who else? Sorry, I mean, that's right.
We was keeping a close eye on the entrance of the cave, obviously. But we never thought no one was gonna come out of the back room like that.
The back room being the pawnbrokery's storeroom.
Yeah, that must have been where it popped up from. Only place it could have been.
So it would seem the victim was already in the storeroom when these brothers entered the premises.
Which means Ginny must have been in there at that point as well.
But that doesn't make sense, does it? If Gina had threatened Mr. Windybank into the storeroom with her at gunpoint, then why would he have emerged from the same room all alone when the brothers arrived?
Oh, I don't know.
Did you see the accused at that time?
What?
That Moltula? Couldn't tell ya.
No way, Cubba. We had a bigger fish to fry then. I mean, the old Jesus just lost it. Give me that gun, he bellowed, and then he flew at us like it was possessed. Thought we had it.
Okay, let's press. You mentioned that Mr. Windybank shouted those words in your previous testimony too. However, you claimed that you heard him yelling them on the other side of the storeroom door.
Did we?
But the truth is, he was shouting those words at you, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Was the victim Mr. Windybank wielding a gun at the time?
Was he ever? Blimey lummy, a great ugly barrel he had, pointed straight at me frontispiece.
So what you're saying is, you definitely saw Mr. Windybank with a gun at that time, is that right?
It is, Gov, it is. Spot on.
Then all of a sudden, he came at us. He did.
It was Bedlam, I don't know what was going for who.
You were clearly all going for each other.
Like Nash said, we thought we'd had it. I mean, for an old geezer, the bloke was strong as an ox. He chucked me over the counter.
Let's press. Yes, I noted that you mentioned the counter in your previous testimony too.
Well, yeah, of course we did.
He knocked over a lot of books, a candlestick, and some skull whatnot.
That got tangled in some marionettes and knocked over a picture frame and what knocked them scales on the floor.
So in fact, it wasn't the sound of the gunshot that shocked you and made you knock those things off the counter?
Well, Big Brother was flying over the counter like a gunshot, I can tell you. Then the old Jesus pinned him.
It did, Nash, it did. If you hadn't been there, the bloke would have flattened me like a blooming pancake in seconds.
At the time in question, the alarm was raised at the local police station via a secret cable from the pawnbroker. There is a button under the counter used to activate it, which was presumably pressed by the victim.
That's right. When the brothers fled the scene and back onto the street, they ran straight into the arriving police, didn't they?
Poor Mr. Windyband. He did everything he could to protect his shop.
I pulled my gun on him and then he legged it through that door into the back room.
Hold it!
Were you intending to shoot Mr. Windybank?
No, never. I was just, looking out for my brother, weren't I? Who was being flattened, don't forget.
By a man whose shop was being burgled, yes.
And then, the man fled into the storeroom when you pointed your gun at him. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. He shoved me away, then ran off through the door and shut himself in.
There's something about that last remark. Something that doesn't quite ring true. Wait a second. He shoved me away, then ran off through that door and shut himself in. There's something about that last remark that doesn't quite ring true.
I wonder why Mr. Windybank ran away into the storeroom.
Yeah, exactly. What?
Well, according to what everyone's saying, Ginny was in there waiting for you with a gun.
Ah, yes, that's right. Gina allegedly used Mr. Windybank's gun to threaten him and force him to open the storeroom door. In which case, how did the gun end up in Mr. Windybank's hands again?
I have no idea, but that is strange, isn't it?
Yeah, that's very strange. This little inconsistency could be significant. I should make a mental note of it.
Look, the point is, me and my brother.
That's right, Nash. That's right. Me and my brother. We never had nothing to do with killing him. That's all what happened, I swear. Hold it!
You say you had nothing to do with it.
Nothing at all.
Nothing, Guff, nothing. The old geezer went and shut himself in the back room, didn't he?
Locked it was from the inside.
You know it was, because we tried to open it.
But it's a decent door, that one. Good and strong, wouldn't budge an inch.
So in the end, the situation remains unchanged. Inside the storeroom, with the pawnbroker, there was only one other person. The sole person who could possibly have shot the victim, the accused Miss Gina Lestrade.
It would indeed appear so. What say you to that, counsel? I don't know. Was there anyone else apart from Gina who could possibly have shot Mr. Windybank? I mean, there is no one else, right? Or am I supposed to go with there could have been? No, we're gonna go with there's no one else. He's right. Gina's the only one. There was no one else in the room.
With an attitude like that, Bruno, it really will be all over.
No, a 10-year-old is reading the expression on my face.
Well, you just don't have that many. Wide-eyed, sweating, smug, and happy. That's about it.
Surely there's more than that, isn't there?
Anyway, I think you might want to consider some other possibilities here.
Oh, okay.
Or rather, I think you have to. Otherwise, we won't get anywhere. Or rather, you won't get anywhere. I'm just here for moral support, remember?
And it's at times like this that I really appreciate it the most. So, that's all these brothers are willing to reveal this time, is it?
They're still hiding something, don't you think?
Yes, I'm sure of it. And not just a minor detail either.
It was almost certainly because of these two that poor Mr. Windybank... Well, you can't let them get away with it, Bruno.
I know, but I get the feeling that there's even less evidence at my disposal this time to prove that they did it.
We've come so far. Now it's time to finish them off.
Well, I'll do my best. Okay, so we are supposed to go forward to the last statement. Press again.
Hold it!
And then just claim that there could have been someone else. So we're gonna do that. Just skip everything. Skip. Alright, so let's go with there could have been. Mr. Skulkin.
What?
What's that look for? From the moment you admitted that you'd encountered the victim face to face that night, the course of this trial changed completely.
What? It did?
What is your point, my learned friend?
The question we must answer is who could have shot Mr. Windybag? And it is the belief of the defense that the defendant is not the only possible answer at all.
You have my attention. In that case, let us return to this plan of the premises. The victim was killed in the storeroom, which was locked from the inside. Those are the facts. So pray, what other possible answer to the question of who shot the man could there be?
That's a very good question. I have no idea, guys. Counsel, you must now provide answers to the court in respect of 2 conundrums. 2, my lord? Twice as many chances to be right, maybe? Indeed, namely, from what location did the culprit shoot the victim? And furthermore, where was the victim at the time? Understood, my lord.
Are you alright, Bruno?
I'm not entirely sure, but there's one thing I am sure about. If I can prove that there's a credible new alternative to what happened, it would change Gina's prospects hugely.
So now, time for some clarity. Shall the court on this plan the answers to the questions posed by his lordship? If you believe someone else could have killed the victim, indicate from where that person could have fired the gun.
Oh, okay. I have to be honest, I have no clue whatsoever. I have no clue whatsoever. This is not an easy one. Well, okay, so maybe so maybe he was killed outside and then moved inside? Okay, I'm just gonna present outside. The defense believes that the culprit could have shot the victim from the outside, from this location here.
And in answer to the second question, assuming the culprit fired from the location indicated, where was the victim at the time?
Well, Mr. Windybag must still have been in the storeroom though. I mean, it wouldn't make sense because if the culprit shot him outside, why would he even bother bringing the corpse inside the storeroom? So there is a window here. But that doesn't really make sense because he was shot with his own gun. I'm still going with this. Okay, this seems to be... The culprit shot the victim from outside the storeroom. Continue. Mr. Winniebank died instantly from a bullet wound in his back. Exactly, so he must have been in the storeroom when he died. Looking at the stain of blood on the storeroom floor, it doesn't appear that the body was moved after the death. Exactly. Which tells us that he was almost certainly shot while he was in the storeroom. However, the crucial point is, where was the shooter when the fatal bullet was fired? So you are adamant that the shot was fired from outside the storeroom? Well, according to the Skulking brothers' earlier testimony,
I pulled my gun on him, and then he legged it through that door into the back room.
if Mr. Winniebank ran away through the door, we have to assume that the door was open at the time.
Oh!
It was at precisely that moment, when the victim was fleeing for his life, that these brothers had the perfect opportunity to shoot the man in the back once he was inside the storeroom.
Yeah! Come to think of it, do you remember what the prosecutor said at the start of the trial?
Moving on to the findings of Scotland Yard's coroner. This report states that the bullet entered the body on a rising diagonal trajectory. It means the victim was likely shot by someone significantly shorter in height than himself.
Poor man, shot while he was running as fast as he could to safety.
Ah, of course. He would have been leaning forward as he was running away. So even if the bullet was fired horizontally, it would still have entered his body on an upward trajectory.
So the culprit isn't necessarily someone shorter than Mr. Winniebank.
Objection!
I'm sure my learned friend can't have forgotten that the storeroom door was found closed and locked from the inside. You claim the victim was shot as he fled into the storeroom. Do you also claim his corpse was dexterous enough to turn the key in the lock?
But, what if someone else locked the door? Yes, there's someone else who could have locked the storeroom door.
Is that so?
Very well then, counsel. Present your hypothesis to the court. In the scenario just described, the defense's assertion is that the victim was shot from outside the storeroom. In which case, who shot and locked the storeroom door from the inside? Well, that's an easy one actually, because there was only Gina, and she was afraid, so she just locked the doorroom, right? The door to the room. So it must be Gina.
Take that!
Obviously, the person who locked the door was the only other person inside the storeroom at the time. The defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade.
Objection!
That's absurd. You're suggesting that the accused deliberately engineered the sealed room? For what possible reason? Such actions would only serve to tighten the noose around her neck.
I am inclined to agree, I must say. Well, counsel. Yes, that's a tricky one, that, isn't it? Half-baked notions have no place in my courtroom, counsel. Remember that, please.
But of course Ginny would have locked the door. It almost goes without saying, doesn't it?
It does? Yeah, she was afraid.
Well, If I was Ginny in that situation, I know I would have locked the door as quickly as I could. I mean, those two burglars had just fired a gun in a direction, hadn't they?
Exactly. Oh yes, obviously. Before the two brothers arrived, Miss Lestrade and Mr. Winniebank were in the storeroom together. Now, I don't know what went on between them at that time, but at some point, Mr. Winniebank must have heard the intruders breaking into his shop and left the storeroom.
Intruders, huh? That's us, bro.
If your theory is correct, that would leave the accused alone in the storeroom.
Yes, it would. Then, probably only moments later, the victim fled back through his storeroom door, hoping to escape danger. Hit in the back by the bullet, Mr. Winniebank fell to the floor where he was just inside the storeroom. And what we have to ask ourselves now is, what would the defendant have done in that moment?
I see where you're going with this.
Outside the storeroom was a terrifying killer who had just murdered Mr. Winniebank. As soon as that thought struck Miss Lestrade, she slammed the door shut and locked it. In order to save her own life.
Hold it!
But we ain't the ones who have done it.
We ain't. You've got to believe us. I mean, come on, we'd no shoot no one.
That's blatantly untrue. I know for a fact that you would. Because for my own eyes, you shot Mr. Herlock Sholmes. There is only one logical conclusion here. Mr. and Mr. Skulkin, your brothers had every opportunity to have been the true perpetrators of Mr. Winniebank's murder. Well.
You mean to say it wasn't the pickpocket who shot the pawnbroker after all?
You should have known it was those three brothers. They look so shady as a dense forest.
That was amazing, Runo. All the members of the jury seem to be firmly on your side now.
I know, first time ever and probably the last.
Well, I think you've done it. Surely they'll have to give a verdict, if not.
An admirable effort, my learned friend.
What's this now? He's laughing?
You find the situation amusing, Lord von Zieks? I must say I find the defense's argument most persuasive. I dare say. Such chicanery is the bread and butter of the street performers in your provincial eastern nation. But such blatantly malicious conjuring tricks amount to nothing more than inexcusable pettifoggery here.
What?
The hypothesis you put forward so ostensibly credibly cannot and will not stand. Because you see, it contains a fatal flaw.
A fatal flaw?
Do you mean to tell that you're unaware of your logic's failing?
I say, Lord von Zieks, might be an idea to explain this bally conjuring trick or whatever it is to the troops on the ground, huh?
The fatal flaw in my learned friend's argument is really very simple to understand. Assuming you're not too dim-witted to count bullets.
By George, count bullets!
Oh dear. He noticed then.
Huh? What's everyone talking about?
Counsel?
Yes, sir?
Tell the court how many bullets were found at the scene of the crime.
Two bullets.
Correct. The first, that which hit the victim in the back, ending his life. And the second, that which struck the detective, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, on his arrival at the scene.
Indeed, the defense presented a picture showing the damage caused by the second bullet earlier in the proceedings. The bullet which injured Mr. Sholmes appears to have passed through his body to strike the calendar.
Your lordship's understanding is correct. Furthermore, we know there are 2 firearms involved in the incident. The revolver belonging to the victim, Mr. Windybag, and the Skulking Brothers' revolver. The evidence shows that a single bullet was fired from each gun.
Yes, indeed it does. A single bullet from each.
Now then, my learned friend, you yourself told the court only moments ago that these 2 brothers shot Mr. Sherlock Holmes right before your eyes.
Yes, I did. Oh my goodness, I think you'll find
But if the
single bullet that was fired from the brother's gun hit Mr. Sholmes, it means...
Windybag not shot by same gun. Stop. Only 1 bullet. Stop.
Exactly.
Yes, this Nipponese street performer presented an ostensibly credible argument. However, it was never anything more than a diversionary trick with no hope of standing up to scrutiny.
Order, order, order!
Pray forgive the discourtesy of flinging the dregs of this hallowed nectar into the public gallery.
Lord Van Zakes,
But this court needs to open its eyes. The accused, Miss Gina Lestrade, is no ordinary little girl. Despite her young years, she can, regrettably, no longer be described as juvenile. No, the person in this dock is far from a law-abiding citizen. She has a past riddled with criminal conduct. The truth is, the accused broke into the pawnbrokery on the night in question with loathsome intent. As we can see beyond doubt in this print which depicts her threatening the victim with the murder weapon. And I have here in my possession one more piece of evidence the prosecution wishes to present.
That disc! I'll be taking that whatever it is of McGilded's down to the yard. Thank you so very much. No, don't! Don't give it to him! It's mine! That is mine! Mine! I'm sorry, miss, but anything belonging to McGilded has to be taken in as evidence now. Yes, that music box disc. McGilded's music box disc.
The very day before the hateful murder of Mr. Windybag, the accused attempted to make off with his article, which clearly doesn't belong to her, and with none of the subtlety of a pickpocket, I might add, but by brute force and brazen impudence.
good gracious!
Make no mistake, any sympathy for the accused on account of her years is misguided and dangerous. There are no depths to which this girl would not stoop if pushed, no crime she would not commit. The court forgets that fact at its peril.
I see. I think it would be prudent to take this music box disc into evidence, Counsel, as a grim testament to the defendant's character.
Lord von Zieks, Inspector Gregson? What?
Yes, Inspector.
We had a meeting yesterday at the yard with the prosecution service and, I think it was agreed that the disc wouldn't be used as evidence. What's this all about? Why is the inspector acting strangely? That's the first time he said anything to von Zieks at all.
I am unaware of any such meeting.
But those were the instructions right from the top. The government bigwigs were insistent.
Inspector, I am the prosecutor, and I alone determine how to present my case. Your warning is noted. Thank you. The prosecution wishes to proceed with submitting this disc as evidence, my lord.
Indeed, bailiff.
The music box disc has been entered into the court record. Music box disc. A metal disc used to play music in a mechanical music box. On the reverse side is a note that reads, "For Mr. McGilded."
The prosecution has established the accuser's motive, opportunity, and baseness of character. There is nothing more to add. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I await your informed decisions and rest my case.
I don't believe it. I had the jury on my side for once, for all of 5 minutes.
Oh dear, it wasn't even for 5 minutes, Runo.
My lord! Wonder if I might say something at this point.
Proceed, Mr. Foreman.
Been stumbling about in a bit of fog up to now, if truth be told, but all of a sudden, the answer's bally obvious to me and my men. There's only one thing for it.
Oh no.
Very well, the court will hear from the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you will present your leanings as to the defendant's culpability.
Guilty.
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 We have a consensus among the jury, it seems.
When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains must be the truth.
That's my line. I wrote that for Hurley.
How dare he use it against us? Don't worry, Iris. I don't think we're finished yet. There's still more to this case than we realize. There must be, because there's one thing that I'm absolutely certain of. Gina didn't shoot Mr. Windybank. That's beyond any doubt.
Very well. We will proceed with the second summation examination of the day. Mr. Foreman, are you and the other jurors ready?
Carry Up Squadron is primed and ready for action, sir.
Very good. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will each explain on what grounds you have now determined the defendant to be guilty.
The jury's contentions. Well, guys, we have reached the half-hour mark and passed it quite significantly, actually. So this is going to be it for this episode of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. If you want to see how the second summation examination is going to unfold, you'll have to tune in next time.
See you there.